Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me thank you all for your participation and tell you how glad I am to be here today and talk with you for this important subject. The title of today's session is really inspiring. Uh, let's build a region that we want to live in. I say inspiring because I think that it essentially connects the 2 points of what is a key recipe for a successful European future in the region. A future that will be attractive enough for the young generations that will not seek Europe and its standards outside their homes. These two threads actually explain that, firstly, things are still in our hands, and that we are the ones who are supposed to build societies that we will be proud of. And secondly, that this is possible only if we are together. So that we should achieve this through outstretched hands and cooperation, especially given that the challenges of countries across the region are more or less the same. The help from Europe is extremely important, but the willingness of the societies themselves to change and grow is crucial. And in that way, any exchange of experiences, ideas, and possible solutions to their problems are crucial. Hence, I think that such meetings are of a great benefit for the future. When you include young people and include people who are really into the topic, I think that they are sharing their perspectives and visions, their problems and ideas about solutions, then you definitely have a recipe for a real motivation. We have extremely important and interesting guests today, and I really expect a fruitful discussion after their short presentations. I don't want to owe much because we are here to hear them all, and I deliberately asked to have only a short time for introduction, and also I asked them to be short, as I don't want to spend much time on this. So we could debate and we could share ideas and what is the most important, address these important questions to those who should have the answers. So our first participant today is Ms. Morgan Janovic. So I'm really here expecting her presentation. So Ms. Janovic, the online floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Dear leaders, young people are the future, but we want a voice now. In a few years, we will be a decision makers of our countries. And in a few years, we will be sitting in your seats. We're not here to talk about the problems, but the solutions that we created during the 18th International Youth Conference, which took place from November 5th and continues until today. Before I start discussing our proposals, I would like to mention two documents. The first one is the European Convention on Human Rights, released by Council in Europe. The convention was adopted in 1950, which was 70 years ago. Then we have a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was adopted by the United Nations and ratified in 1948. That was 72 years ago. Article 1st of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. In recent months, all of us have heard about the growing aversion towards LGBTQ+. They may be a non-heteronormative people among us right now. The reason why I'm saying this is that LGBTQ is a big part of our society, so we must protect them. The way to improve the situation of sexual minorities is the implementation of the rule of law via EU in collaboration with NGOs and CSOs. National representatives should oppose anti-LGBTQ plus propaganda, including imposing sanctions against verbal and physical violence towards LGBTQ plus community. Another change for the better is legalization of same-sex marriage, for which most young leaders are in favor. The fact is that women make up about 50% of society. So we definitely should pay more attention to gender equality. It can be achieved by making it easier for women to report domestic crimes and actively educate police officers to process such crimes. Government and private companies must work together to maximize equal pay efforts and promotion of women to senior positions that are, as we all know, male dominated. Taking the example of the protests that are currently happening in my country, in Poland, we all know that access to safe abortion is crucial in every progressive country. However, health is not just about abortion. COVID-19 showed us how dependent we are on our mental health. As young leaders, we believe that we have to start discussing mental health openly without stigmatization. I don't know if any of the leaders here are aware about the suicide statistics this year. I have looked at these statistics and I am terrified. If the government put more effort into promoting mental health in schools, I can guarantee you that the number of suicides would be lower. Furthermore, we need more free consulting healthcare phone lines and communication platforms. We all know that young people are our future. We will be the makers of our countries. So why not invest more in us? Increasing the involvement of young people will be useful for all generations. We need to engage young people with diverse backgrounds in national youth councils and encourage them to get involved in their local community. There's also a need to stop discrimination based on age when selecting public employees. We can replace age specifications with qualifications. To take care of citizens of this region, we also propose to increase the number and accessibility of paid internships so that people see the social sector as meaningful perspective. Those were some of our proposals for human rights and equity, healthcare and youth participation. Thank you.
Sincere speech. You raise questions that are really important as human rights, as women rights, that especially in your country, we all know it's a real battle now, and we should all support that. Also, collaboration as a key aspect in addressing and finding a solution of these problems. And I'm just putting these topics just to have in mind when we open discussion later as a key note of your speech. And I just also want to mention one thing that Morgan said, and that is that these young leaders, these young people will be the ones who will make decisions in their countries in the future. So we all should have that in mind when we are addressing and talking about these issues. Thank you, Morgan, again. The next participant is Burak Gyun. I think I pronounced that well. So please, Mr. Burak, go on.
Thank you. You pronounced well, by the way. I would like to wish you good morning from Istanbul. My topic would be employment, sustainability, and green economy. I will be covering these three in next few minutes. Well, as these youth from Southeastern Europe, we were gathered by this conference, and we prepared some proposals to the decision makers. We all know the problems. Well, what are the problems? So now I will propose in three sections our propositions. Firstly, I will propose our solutions for the short run, and afterwards I will go for medium, and I will finish my presentation with long run. To begin with, I would like to point out that youth mobility and exchange are extremely important for youth and their future. We need this exchange in order to meet another leaders in another countries, to widen our perspective, and maybe even deepen our relations with other countries, our colleagues from other countries. So we would like to underline the importance of deepening the relations within the international organizations, but also our neighbors, the other countries surrounding our countries, and so that we can promote this mobility and youth exchange more and more, and we will present more opportunity to the youth to develop themselves and meet with their colleagues in other countries. And this will create a spillover effect that all the countries will somehow manage to modernize and reformate some of their systems by this youth who had already widened their perspectives by meeting and discovering in somewhere else, in abroad. I would like to point out another point for medium run, which is promoting fairly paid internships and jobs. We all know that that is also a crucial problem for all the youth, and we're all suffering from low, say, uh, less paid or not fairly paid internships and jobs. So our proposition is promoting NGOs activities in this area by naming and shaming. NGOs might be more active and create reports for private companies or also governmental bodies, so that they will share explicitly which company or which government is fairly paying their interns or which is not, so that the companies or the governments will feel like they are compelled to pay fairly on an equal basis and treat their interns and employees fairly. And for finishing, I'm going to differentiate from John Maynard Keynes' perspective for the long run. Yeah, we will be all that, but also we will be living until that point. So we need a structural change in our economy. For a resilient economy, we don't have to sweep the problems under the carpet, but we have to face them, and we have to change something. How? If we don't invest in rural areas, if we don't create the jobs, we will be suffering in 20 years. So we will be suffering over time in the long run. But if we are paying now, which means that investing in rural areas and creating more jobs, which means that we will be paying less, but now, and we are deciding when to pay for this. If we are not doing this, we will be paying in 20 years maybe, and we will lose these 2 decades and we'll be paying more. So this investment in rural areas and creating jobs over there, giving subsidies, as we can observe in Western European model, is critically important. And investing in green energy, eliminating fossil fuels and coal by regulations is also extremely important here. So a cooperation of know-how might be efficient. We might take the example of Alpine cooperation, of which 2 Southeastern European countries are members, Slovenia and Italy namely. And we can create a regional organization or body which can promote cooperation between countries, and we can develop ourselves, our countries, with the share of know-how. Thank you for listening to me, and I am leaving the scene for Dora.
Thank you, Burak, for your ideas, and thank you for putting the economy in the focus. I think it's really important. And when we are talking about addressing and making solutions, we are usually forgetting that the business sector, the companies, are also responsible and are a key actor in this field. We are usually addressing the governments, the politicians, and NGO, as you said. But also companies and business community, they also do have a responsibility, and we should put them also in this field. So the collaboration between NGO and companies and the government is really crucial. And what else you said, and I think it's really important, is this exchange of experience between different countries and young people from other countries, because more or less we do have the same problems here in the region. So that's also very important. We should discuss later about these ideas you mentioned of creating well-paid jobs, which is really important for making young people and to stay home and not to live abroad. Thank you very much, Burek. Now I'm asking Dora Varjacic. She's next. Please, Dora.
Thank you very much. I will be focusing on the last part of our vision regarding the education and cross-border cooperation. As we all know, education should give youngsters and adults a chance to become aware, responsible, independent people. But what happens when the educational system does not give those outcomes? What happens when it does not contribute to the economic and social development? Well, then it's time for some serious reforms. It's time for reforms that are making education affordable and accessible for all youth. Time for investing in universities, in schools, and creating quality, up-to-date, innovative atmosphere, to promote inclusion and protection of human rights. It's time to provide system for students to express their opinion regarding the topic that is depending on their own personal development, the education. We, young people, want to have conditions to grow, and we are aware that the growth is not possible without the radical changes in the curriculum, without civil, sexual, media literacy education, without time for more extracurricular activities that interest us. On one hand, we want to have teachers to be supported through opportunities which brings them constant professional development. And on the other, we want to be heard. We want to have support, especially regarding the mental health, the economic situation, and specific needs of the individuals. Also, we cannot forget about the responsibility of higher education institutions to form international partnerships, to support diversity and provide opportunities for all equally. We all know that the world is changing, constantly developing, improving, and it's not the same as it was 5 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So I'm asking you, how can youth lead the future and take the wheels to move forward if the education is stuck doing its old habits with the same traditional approach? The policymakers, the government, the representatives of our countries are responsible to provide and enable the conditions that are letting young people explore and find their own individual sparkle, their own purpose. And even when the conditions are reinforced, it cannot stop here. But reforms and specific actions needs to be implemented in every school, every university, in any educational institution. Maybe some of you know the sentence, a dream you dream alone, it's just a dream. A dream you dream together, it's a reality. If the individual with his own sparkle can do so much, imagine what a group of young people with a vision of peaceful and stable region can do. We know that especially in the SEE region, a lot of old fears, past conflicts and barriers are preventing the rise of powerful bilateral and multilateral cross-border cooperation. Unresolved issues between Croatia and Serbia, between Serbia and Kosovo, now Bulgaria and North Macedonia, are introducing intolerance in their relations and creating even greater barriers between the citizens of those countries. So how can we grow as a region if we don't believe our own neighbors? If we are still living in the past and letting the past influence on the opinions of people we have never met? Well, we can't. That is why in this diverse region, our vision is to focus on mutual success, to support Western Balkan countries into joining the EU, to advocate equal rights for people from non-EU countries, to resolve disputes between countries so that finally the reconciliation can be achieved. We need to start building strategic partnership, stronger security network, creating bilateral agreements to provide equal opportunities in every country, for every country in the SEE region. Knowing the importance of regional cooperation, we want to create exchange space for youth from different countries to promote peace-building communication and intercultural dialogue, because every voice must be heard. no matter from which country are you coming from. The government, international organizations, and European institutions should be investing in youth capacities, promoting the importance of diplomacy and international relations, and to educate people regarding the political issues. By advocating changes in political systems, we are fighting for the freedom of speech and transparent democracy without corruption. To reach these changes, there has to be a cooperation between young people and the decision makers as a vital part of healthy democracy. We are a region that have so much potential, but we are not using it enough. We are constantly focusing on differences without seeing the endless possibilities to grow not only as individuals, but also as a community. It is also up to us young people, and we have to understand how strong we are together. And by advocating our mutual vision, we can influence the decision makers and create real steps for shaping the future of the region. So let's not waste this wonderful 6 days of an amazing conference, and let's make this vision a reality, our reality, together with the decision makers and with other young people. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Dora. This was a great speech with, really important remarks about the region, which is we're still open issues between neighbors and neighboring countries that we have to resolve. You said one sentence, I want to repeat it. Imagine what a group of young people with a vision can do. We should all imagine that, but it's not enough to imagine. We should create conditions how to make it true, actually, and how these visions to implement into the reality. And that's where we go to the decision makers, as you mentioned, and who are supposed to hear your voice. I'm really excited to announce that today with us we have our president, Macedonian president, Mr. Stevo Pendarovski, who is one of them, the decision makers. So I'll be direct, Mr. Pendarovski. Do you hear them? Actually, do you hear these young people?
That's my job. Hi to everybody. That's my job to hear not only the young people, but everybody, but especially the young people.
Okay. Thank you very much. You are here today with us, and you are here to speak as the president of a country, as one of the people who are in the position to bring changes, not only to talk about them. Can you tell us more about your vision, about the region, about the role that the young people should have in this region and in addressing and resolving the issues?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to ask, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you then. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I was more than glad to accept an invitation to address this important gathering of young and bright people. So, distinguished participants in the 18th International Youth Conference, it's my pleasure to participate in the conference for the third time. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we are forced to meet only virtually, but I hope that the next conference will be organized in beautiful Kruševo, as always. This year, the organizers encouraged us to talk about a very important topic, European values for the future of Southeastern European countries. Values determine our decisions and thus determine the direction our countries will go. The politicians are constantly talking of European values, and that become an unavoidable part of the political jargon. Yet the key question is, what do we mean by European values? Creating a Europe united in peace is one of the most important political projects of our time. Our continent went through very difficult times, dominated by nationalists, totalitarian ideologies, 2 world wars, and millions of victims. And after all that destruction and suffering, the leaders of the Western European countries choose to build Europe on democratic principles in which the rule of law prevails and human rights and freedoms are protected and promoted. This idea inspired us to reform and transform our countries in the region, in order to provide our citizens a prosperous life. But if we look for a moment at the current situation in each of our countries, we will notify some worrying trends, unfortunately. I know that many young people from North Macedonia are not satisfied with the results we achieved in the fight against organized crime and corruption, nepotism, or with the effects of the economic and educational policies. The youth dissatisfaction is always a bad news because it shows that politicians have failed to build an inclusive societies, a growing economy, and a culture of dialogue. In the same time, as long as young people are dissatisfied, but ready to voice their dissatisfaction, there is hope for all of us. We should be much more concerned if the young people are indifferent or passive, which means they either are accepting the shortcomings of the systems or look for a better life abroad. Unfortunately, many are choosing one or the other alternatives each day. Certainly, the pandemic further complicates the already complex situation. High level of structural unemployment is projected, especially among the young people, and globally, some 180 million of them are employed in the sectors which are the most affected by the pandemic, while 1 in 6 young people in the world is unemployed. Dear friends, in the dire but in the regular times, as well, politicians not only have to listen carefully to young people, but to involve them in decision-making and policy-making. With that in mind, a few days ago, I launched the Presidential Center for Political Education, aiming to deepen the link between the youth and institutions. This center should help educate young people about political culture, democracy, human rights and freedoms, tolerance and solidarity. With our partners from the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs, the International Republican Institute, and Macedonia 2025 Foundation, we want to connect with organizations at home and abroad which do believe in the same ideas. It shall be our contribution to promote European values in the region. But the precondition for the projected positive effects is to start negotiations for membership in the European Union during the German presidency by the end of this year, of course. Germany is one of the most important investors in our region. But in my view, the most important German investment are the efforts for the region's integration into the Union. The eventual blockage of the negotiations would be a failure of the Union and will inflict serious damage to its credibility in the eyes of the Macedonian citizens. It goes without saying that it will encourage even more the immigration of our young people. An integration process on hold has always been a source of frustration and disappointment, a playing field for the nationalists, and an open invitation to malign geopolitical influences. Postponing the process will send a wrong message, not only to the Macedonian citizens, but to the entire region, that a country that can make even the most difficult decisions and went through the greatest sacrifices, and still at the end will not get what it deserves. It will plainly expose whether Europe is only a common market or a community of values in the same time, and whether the political decisions of the Union are based only upon the national interests of the member states, or the common European values are taken into consideration as well. Dear friends, nothing speaks more about European values than the symbolism of yesterday and today. On November 9 and 10, 1989, the citizens of Berlin began to tear down the wall that divided not only their city, but also Europe in two. That courageous act of freedom was an important step toward the unification of Europe in the spirit of liberty. But this day should also remind us that before is built of concrete and barbed wire, every wall of division is first built in people's minds and reflects their values. It all starts with our perception of the other, the different, the otherness. Our identity, language, collective memory, perceived as a threat or as a contribution to the common European future. Beyond doubt, any unprincipled blockage of the European perspective of any country in the Western Balkans will be in function of maintaining the remains of that wall that divided Europe. Here I can envision the role of youth. Far away from the stereotypes of the past, You see the region and Europe from a different perspective, without borders and without prejudices. Your vision, certainly more than the vision of the old generation I belong to, is immune to the virus of nationalism, chauvinism, intolerance, not only among states, but also within the states. Hence, I encourage you to send messages to your political leaders and to the EU leaders that we need to complete the project of United Europe, but based on humanism and dignity of people. I thank you for your attention.
For sharing again the really important message how important the European integration is, not only for our country but also for the region, having in mind that we still have an open issues here between the neighboring countries. And otherwise, what the message will be if our country will not start the negotiation process now. Then thank you for sharing the great remark that we should be worried if young people are indifferent, not worried, and when they are not satisfied, then that's a good thing actually because it keeps them engaged. When we talk about European values and the challenges in front of European future today, maybe we should address someone from Europe and from the institutions there. So we have today with us Mr. Ilhan Kyuchuk, a member of the European Parliament. So maybe he can talk more about the situation nowadays in Europe and the challenges with the European values, which we all will agree that are on a serious test. Mr. Kyuchuk, please.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to speak in front of the young people, and I want to thank Friedrich Ebert Foundation as well for organizing this political leaders program for Western Balkans. It is important to talk about young people, and usually coming from the youth, I have two-sided approach, and I can choose one of them. The first approach is to speak what you like. That is the usual approach. And the second approach is to speak the truth. And in front of young people, I prefer to speak the truth. And the truth is the change is a nice word, but will not come without efforts. Efforts from the grassroots civil society, efforts made by the young people. And the second point is about the change again. The change is not always for better. I promise to you, I'm going to talk only true things. And here we come to the main point about European values, European integrations, and certainly I think, and I always stated in my different capacities, member of European Parliament, before that member of political bodies, and nowadays as standing rapporteur for North Macedonia, the following: the future of European Union is the future of the next generations. And the second statement is the future of European Union should include the countries from the Western Balkans. Especially nowadays, we live in turbulent times, difficult for each of us in understanding where we want to go. And certainly, I think if there is no intergovernmental conference until the end of this year, will be triple woes. Woes for North Macedonia, because I know what the political leadership of the country did for the last months and years to overcome the difficult historical debate, but also to have free and fair elections and to build a legitimate government, very reform oriented towards European Union. And they did a great job in achieving the first strategic priority of the nation. Being part of NATO, they completed the first task, and now the second one should come. Will be a war situation for any neighboring country, to my country, Bulgaria as well. because we'll lose in front of our international friends and partners credibility. But also, I always think that Bulgaria and North Macedonia are natural allies in NATO, and I want to see them as a natural allies in neighboring countries, sharing common historical debates, but also sharing common future in European Union. And the third rules will be for European Union. European Union had a great potential to bring, and especially the Parliament, but I want to salute the efforts of European Commission as well, to bring the idea of European integration, to rebuild it, to give more trust in European societies, be it with the new methodology, be it with the new investment and economic plan, to higher place in European policies. So in the end of the day, will be three rules. No one will win certainly from a potential, or I don't want to use potential, but for eventual political deadlock. And let me come back to the issues that you have touched on already. Certainly, youth mobility and sustainability, or even the sustainable growth, are important part of youth policies. And here I come to economic and investment plan. There's a huge potential in the plan proposed by European Commission to change radical, to make an even U-turn in Western Balkan societies. And this should come with conditions, of course, because if we don't put conditions today, we'll not be able to put conditions tomorrow or day after tomorrow. But I want to see from the positive side. I want to bring a positive narrative for the future generations. And this will come with the new investment and economic plan, with making fast transition, using digitalization and green economy. And there is another big opportunity for a younger generation in participating in youth policies. Before, my group Renew supported, and even more, we were driving force, even instructing the European Commission not to put only Western Balkans in the basket, but to link them to the European policies years before their real integration in the Union. We're going to talk about the future of Europe, of this new Europe, Europe of developments, Europe of achievements, but also Europe of failures. We're going to discuss about European Union for the next 15, 20 years with the challenges ahead of us. But certainly, we have to start talking about the conference for the future of European Union. And here, I don't mean this European Union with 27 member states. I mean broader European Union with integrated Western Balkan countries. I don't see integration only for security reasons. I see integration for the reasons of prosperity, for the reasons of bridge building, for the reason of connecting people and using all the chances given by European project. We have to keep in our minds, Europe is our continent, but Europe is a continent of chance. Europe is given a chance, and we have to give a chance to the younger generations coming from Western Balkans to build their own future. They deserve it. They deserve it, and we have to do the very right things as politicians of today to guarantee the role of the politicians of tomorrow. But again, I started with a bit of criticism, not to younger generation, but also to myself as a young man, as a politician, as a young politician. And I want to stop with more or less the same message. Don't wait, people. The change will not come with only with sitting in the comfortable situation, in a comfortable position, and having a nice drink and watching TV. The change will come the real change will come only if we want it, if we deserve it, if we work for it. The future of the younger generation starts from today. We cannot rely on the good future if we don't start working from today. So my message, very simple message, is future starts from today. Let's do the right things, but also let's work with vision, and let's be smart. But more importantly, get out of the comfortable situation. Use your mind, but use your emotion as well, because democracy is always for those who are willing to take it. Take the biggest piece from the cake. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kyuchuk, for your emotional and motivational speech today.
I hope so.
And also for making a remark again of importance of the starting of negotiation process for our country, for the region as well, and putting light spot on the bilateral relations with Bulgaria. We can also probably discuss that later during the debate. Today with us we have another politician. He's also a young politician from our country, Mr. Arber Ademi, who is the chair of the European Affairs Committee, but who also used to be a Minister of Education. So he has an experience with working with young people and their needs, their problems, and the solutions for them. Mr. Ademi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, distinguished President of the Republic of North Macedonia, Mr. Stevo Pendarovski, distinguished Mr. Ilhan Kyuchuk, Member of European Parliament, distinguished youngsters, attendees, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, allow me to thank you for the honor and the opportunity to speak before this youth forum. I am especially pleased to be part of such a forum where we speak of the youth and youth policies in our state. For a state to move forward, it needs most of the youth energy, their enthusiasm, innovativeness, and youth characteristics. The youth in our state lives in a multicultural and multi-ethnic society. This was the reality through the centuries. Since we are self-aware, this is the case today, and we should take this as an advantage and added value. Nevertheless, in the overall diversity, there is a single goal and an effort: North Macedonia to become a member state of the European Union. As a member of the Assembly and a representative of the political party Democratic Union for Integration, but above all, as a chairman of the Committee on European Affairs of the Assembly of the Republic of North Macedonia, the greatest priority for me is the efforts for our state to become a member of the European Union. Why? Because of the youth and their future. The introduction of European values and principles is necessary for the overall welfare. These values, because we are sharing the same values, European values, should be nurtured always and with any doubts, so that the youth will stay in their state, fully involved in its growth and development. The drain of young, educated people has been a wider issue for the states of the Western Balkans and beyond for a while. The percentage of young people desiring to leave their state increases. Hence, I would like to underline the importance of strengthening the regional cooperation of the young people from the Western Balkans and beyond, aiming to progress the efforts for improving the position of youth in society. This cooperation is especially underlined in the framework of the Berlin process. These youth forums dedicated to the youth affairs could be broadened and practiced in the framework of the committees on European affairs of the Southeast European states, COSAP, held biannually in different presidency state. This conference is dedicated to the exchange of practices in the European integration processes in the region could include as a gender activity a point dedicated to the youth. I believe that it is significant to address the important issues for the youth and to exchange practices and opinions on a regional level. As a chairman of the Committee on European Affairs in this composition of the Assembly at the next COSAP conference, I shall propose the affairs of the young people, the situation and the youth policy making process on the level of Southeast European states to be a topic of discussion. I would like to underline that the Assembly in its previous composition, prior the finalization of the mandate in January 2020, so this year, made a significant step forward, adopting the law on youth participation and youth policies, a law which is a solid foundation for inclusion of the youth in the policy-making process on all levels via sectorial approach, as well as their increased involvement in the municipalities. We especially need the youth's force and enthusiasm when the state restlessly works on opening accession negotiations with the EU. As representatives of the Assembly, our task is to adopt European laws which will transposition the EU directives and regulations. In this process, it is necessary to include the youth and their knowledge and professionalism. The Committee on European Affairs continue the practice to include the civic organizations in the public debates and the committee meetings. In this mandate, I shall stand for greater inclusion of the youth in the process of policy making, affairs significant for the youth, as well as their inclusion in the social system. The youth is the main pillar of our European future. They can and we need them to assist us in surpassing all challenges and difficulties. They are also the engine that shall move us towards you. Believe me, as a previous Minister of Education and Science, I am aware of the strength and the power of the young people and the need of their inclusion in all social processes. We need to continue building partnership between the institutions and the youth civil organizations, as well as all those collaborate with young people in order to provide active participation of the youth and appropriate representation of their opinion in solving the problems. The youth is an important chain of our system. Investing in the youth is an investment in the better future of each state. Let us continue building better and brighter future for all of us. Thank you for your attention.
You've mentioned that the collaboration is important, not only between the institutions of the system, but also between the young people from the countries among the region. And also you put a really interesting aspect about the role of the parliament as one of the key institutions in the country, and maybe some new laws which can help in resolving all these issues. With Mr. Ademi, we closed this part of the session, and we will open now the floor for discussion and debate, ideas, questions, and everything you want to say. Maybe to address some question to the politicians and people who are decision makers, but also you can just make some comment. Who wants to start first? We also have guests from our embassies here, from the embassy from the EU delegation from Skopje, in Skopje, and from the German embassy as well, and the Romanian embassy. So maybe we can start with them.
Hello. It
Hello,
seems that
please.
none of my colleagues is ready to take the floor, so I will try to say a couple of words. My name is Gabriel Nicola. I'm Chargé d'Affaires at the Romanian Embassy in Skopje. And thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this excellent forum. I heard a lot of interesting ideas, and I'm very glad that we are having in our countries such well-prepared, well-educated youngsters that will tomorrow take the commands of some of our institutions. I really want to congratulate the organizers, but also the participants in the panel for their very interesting idea, and I hope that at the end of this conference we will have a written material that I could share with my authorities in Bucharest. Thank you very much.
If you like, I can say a few words. Yes. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all. Not least the President of the Republic, Mr. Pendarovski. Pleasure to see you, Mr. Ademi. I haven't prepared any speech, and I just want to share with you a personal experience as somebody who was about your age when my own country was also starting negotiations with the European Union. And if I could look back a little bit and think what I would have done more of at the time, it would be to position yourselves for the benefits of membership. The benefits will not fall on your lap. They will not come overnight. But when I look back, I can see that the people who benefited most, who got most out of membership, are the ones who, through hard work, understood where their place can be in their country as a new member state. There will be opportunities in many, many sectors. It is up to you to identify those that you would like to exploit, but it will take preparation. It will take preparation to understand the new opportunities, the new laws that will be adopted, and how you can use those to further your ambitions and give something to society. And then one other suggestion I have is volunteer. Take this time to volunteer for a cause that is important for you. You have perhaps more time on your available to you than you will have in the rest of your life. It's a good opportunity to volunteer, to give something back, but also because you learn so much from it. Volunteering is a good opportunity to understand your strengths and your weaknesses, while also making a contribution to society. I myself was very involved in ELSA, the European Law Students Association, and I look back to those years, realizing just how much I've learned from volunteering, from working with other people my own age, from my country and from other countries, learning how to negotiate, how to compromise, and how to build things in a team. So if I were to have two pieces of advice, it would be those. It would be position yourself, do your homework, so that when the time comes, you are well placed, and volunteer, participate in voluntary organizations, in student organizations, because it is extremely rewarding and extremely valuable for your future. I'm also very happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Thank you.
I will say great advice for volunteering. I think it's really important because you do have time now and you can find a cause which you find really important and worth for that. I see Mr. Igor Stoikov wants to maybe ask a question or add a comment, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to state that I really appreciate the opportunity that we have here to talk with all of those officials and and people who are making changes and making decisions in this country and other countries. And I have a specific question to to the actual Mr. President. So President Pendarovsky, back in March, you declared state of emergency for COVID-19, which was a good call, I think, and thank you for doing that. But when will be the good time to declare state of emergency pertaining to climate change and the existential threat of climate change? So building European future means having a sustainable economy, sustainable energy system, and I think I just want to ask when will be the right time to actually start doing something for climate change. And I really, again, I appreciate your answer and appreciate your time being here. Thank you so much. I'm Igor and I'm from North Macedonia as well.
Thank you, Igor. Mr. Pendarovsky, this was a question about the danger that we are not facing only a pandemic danger with COVID here, but also climate changes is a real thing. Can you please answer this?
Yeah, of course, Igor, thank you for your question. I would like to compare two situations, then state of emergency concerning COVID-19 and state of emergency concerning the climate change or the danger coming to all of us from that side. I haven't heard of any country in the world, to be honest with you, which has declared a state of emergency concerning these global menace, I would say. But anyhow, it's good to think about that possibilities. What I have done in the past months or year and a half since I have been elected as the president, according to our constitution, according to our laws, I do not have the direct responsibilities in that area, but that did not prevent me from trying to do something in this regard. I have convened, believe it or not, you know that because you're from North Macedonia, but I'm speaking for the rest of the field of young people. So I have convened a Security Council meeting last year in December with only one topic on the agenda, only one item: pollution of the air, which has been really really high at that time, especially in our towns, especially in our capital. And on that Security Council meeting, which has all the competent politicians in the country, president of the country, president of the parliament, prime minister, defense minister, foreign minister, interior minister, and a few of the experts, I have invited the people from the NGO community. For the first time in our history, people from the NGO community have posed direct questions and asking for answers from the responsible politicians, from the prime minister, from my side, from everybody. And that session of the Security Council meeting lasted for 3.5 hours, apart from being the first one of that profile. So it was very instrumental in raising awareness among the people living in the country that no one is untouchable regarding the climate changes, including the people who up to that moment has not been called upon as directly being responsible for the air pollution, for example. And I have announced already that maybe not by the end of this month, but certainly by the end of this year, I will repeat that experience because that's my responsibility. We have already started to measure very high levels of pollution, air pollution in Skopje and a few other towns in the country. And certainly there is the need to repeat that kind of a session and to ask again the politicians in power what they have done in the meantime. And I'm really glad to hear the ecology minister, the people being in charge directly for the protection of the human environment, apart from the usual suspects, the prime minister and the respective and other of the respective ministries. And I can tell you that after that session of the Security Council meeting, all of us will go ahead to the public and answer the questions of the general public, not only to the people being present at that session and coming from the NGO community, because we have to be much more responsible in this regard. One of the conclusions last time from last year meeting of the Security Council was that we should, if possible, double the sums of money and resources dedicated by the state in order to protect better our environment. Unfortunately, all of that stay on paper because of the pandemic. We have cut twice our national budget, annual national budget. For this year, we have cut off very sizable amounts of money being dedicated, not only in that field, in many other fields. The budget of the president was cut with big sums of money twice this year. And of course, everything should be put into that function, which is most vital for our citizens to protect the health of our people. We are in the second peak of that pandemic as we are seeing throughout the continent and throughout the world. And of course, everything should be put and focused on in that direction. But that does not mean that we should not take care about the air pollution, because according to some of the recent studies done, if you have a bad environment, that especially high levels of air pollution, it will for sure increase by at least 15% the people who are dying from COVID-19. So that is everyone's responsibility, especially the people who are now in power. And I can tell you that we are not going to shy of calling publicly on the responsible politicians, on the government, on the municipalities as well. And all of them should owe the answers to the people. And we cannot say that now it's a pandemic and we should think only about the COVID-19. There are other causes for people dying, and we should not be looking into other directions than health of the people. Then it should be the first. It has to be the first and the supreme responsibility of all responsible politicians. So, in my view, speaking about the environment, which is unfortunately throughout the world not perceived as the national danger, but as a global threat, and many people among the politicians are not still aware that it is a special threat aiming at your country within your borders, because that's the menace obviously going across the borders, then we should make much more in raising the awareness that it should be everyone's worry. It shouldn't be that this should be that should be the worry of the United States of America, of People's Republic of China, or any particular country, or France or Germany. We are all in that pot, I would say, and everybody is feeling the consequences, and they are not good. They are not good.
That Scotland did declare a state of emergency for climate change in 2019, but you mentioned what other measures we're taking, and you mentioned how important the awareness of this problem is, that many of the politicians do not take it for serious. I will ask now Miss Katrin Fruchenfeld from the German embassy in Skopje. Sorry for pronouncing your last name. Please.
I would like to thank you for inviting me to this final session of the conference. And I'm really very satisfied about the outcome and conclusions the young people draw out of these 5 days. It is important that this conference is taking place for the 18th time. And I think it's not only for the region here, the Southeast European region, but also for the rest of Europe, important that young people discuss openly about the emerging problems and that they try to find their own solutions to that. And so congratulations to the organizers and congratulations to the participants, and thank you also to the special guests, especially the President, Mr. Pandadowski, and Mr. Ademi, to have taken part in this conference. And yeah, all the best. Thank you.
I don't want to keep him, so now we will address this question to him from Nina Jovanovska. Nina, please.
Yes. Dear President, you previously mentioned that many young people in North Macedonia are not satisfied with your results of the problems regarding nepotism, corruption, structural changes, etc. So my question to you is, what are you currently doing exactly to keep the young people from moving out and to improve these results? Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. I wouldn't like to sound as a cliche, but it's obvious that according to our political system, my responsibilities are not within that parameters, within that area, and I don't have the direct responsibility for taking the measures or, I don't know, adopting the laws or yeah, I can make only the statements, and I can only mobilize the people, the politicians, the respective political parties being in power, the decision makers which are in charge for taking assuming concrete measures. It seems to me that the best way, I mentioned that, raising the awareness, the best way to push the people in that direction, to think more and to act concretely more on the subject is to ask them directly every day, every week, every month in the year, what they are doing concretely. Otherwise, we are going to see only the talk as usual. The people will speak about European integration, about before that we have been immersed fully into that NATO integration. They will speak about the rule of law, nothing concrete. If we are not making the topic of the status of the young people, and especially the demographic changes, which are very negative throughout the region, not only in North Macedonia, if we are not making that topic the supreme topic in each election campaign, then the politicians are not going to take care about that. Believe me. My intention is in the next few months, depending on the COVID situation, because we are really still preoccupied with dealing with the COVID situation, and all institutions are fully into that. That's not an excuse, but I'm speaking about the reality. My intention is to convene a special session of the Security Council and to speak only about demographic tendencies, because we are not speaking about only the young, bright people leaving the country, but everybody which has the chance to do that is leaving the country. I can tell you that we have not executed a proper census since 2002, but estimation of the relevant institutions is that we have lost approximately 20-25% of our population compared with the times from former Yugoslavia, when we have been 2.1 million people. So we have scheduled the census for next year, for April to 2021, and I can tell you that everybody is fearing the results, because everybody is sensing, is feeling that the results are going to be very bad, that maybe we couldn't be more than 1.5, 1.6 million people still living in the country. So we should raise the awareness about my prime thesis, speaking about analyzing the trend tendencies in the demographic field, is that it is not possible to stop only young people from leaving the country if you are not doing something for stopping everybody's leaving or thinking about leaving the country. What does that mean? If you are making the economy better, it should make the life better for each categories, each age groups, not only for young people. I cannot invoke any single example of any European country which has somehow decreased the number of people leaving the country, and they succeeded only in reducing the number of young people leaving the country. Take the latest example of Croatians who are leaving the country, although they are for 7-8 years members of the European Union. people from different ages live in Croatia, not only the young people age 20, 25. So either you're gonna, that's my view, then you should improve the state of the economy. And apart from that, you should enable the people with their skills to apply for each job available in the country, not only to look into their ID from political parties or into their ethnicity. So unfortunately, in this country, in my country, in our country, we have a lot of the people who have the best of the skills, who have the best of the diplomas, who have the best of the experiences throughout the universities in Europe and in the world, are not able to approach any of the institutions because as I said, the prime reason for the young people to be, most of them to be engaged in the state institutions or even in the private sector is your ethnicity, your party ID, or if you have some so-called links or connections with somebody in power. That certainly should not be the criteria for engaging the young people. So seeing that, then the situation in the rule of law area and seeing that the economy is worsening, I can add to that the European Union prospects, which are not bright. I'm not speaking for the current moment. We are waiting for that first intergovernmental conference. But if you are waiting for a decade to become, under the best of circumstances, the full-fledged member of the Union, then how many of you in that age will say, okay, I'm going to wait for 10 years more in order to become the member of the European Union. And after that, maybe European principles and standards will be applied more in my country. So we have only one life. No one would like to waste the years and years of our lives waiting for the politicians to somehow to put in their minds that you should have non-selective use of the law. You should have the skills of the young people as the first criteria to engage in them. And in the first place, that goes for the European Union leaders in Brussels as well. Put aside your political infighting for years. Who is gonna get a bigger part of the European Union budget for the next 7 years? Just think that the European integration project is still not done. Many of the Western European countries are waiting for that. It's not normal to wait for 30 years to be the member of the European Union. If you're putting aside the Western Balkan countries and thinking only about their chasing the profit, speaking about dividends at the end of the year, speaking only about, as I have mentioned in my speech, and envisaging Europe only as the common market and not in the same time as the community sharing the same values, then we are not going to be far away from this point where we are now. And at present, it's obvious to everybody, and realistically speaking, that there are at least 2, maybe even 3 Europes, which are still far away from each other, although we are residing, geographically speaking, on the same spot.
Thank you, Mr. Pendarovski, for your answer, especially mentioning that how important it is to create and find well-paid jobs outside the political parties, which I think that is one of the main problems here. We have a question from Anis Benebat.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the floor. Well, actually, I'm so happy to be again part of this amazing event. Thank you so much to the organizers for this opportunity. And actually, as we were working on the vision as a group, I got a very maybe brief, or I have 2 questions, maybe to the President and to the participants. Honorable President, do you think that the economic and investment plan would be a major criteria to push up the economic levels and upgrade the sectors of economy of North Macedonia by, we may just say, by the investments of just the European Union, or you may consider American investments, foreign investments are very considerable also to North Macedonia, taking China, for example, Japan or other countries. Would you support foreign investments to push up the Macedonian economy so it might be a very possible country for the European Union and maybe one day be one of the major economies so in the EU? The other question, yes, to Honorable President, how far would you agree with having a youth deciding area in the world? Actually, it's been my dream. as a researcher and a PhD student in economic and international affairs, and the one who has been part of different events and has taken different positions in international organizations. Would you agree to have an international youth council, an international youth parliament, an international maybe youth commission like in the EU, just to decide in the world like the United Nations, the EU, and maybe other international organizations in the world. So the voice of youth in the future will be very strong and heard and participate in avoiding conflicts and be part of the peaceful area. Thank you so much for listening. And
okay, thank you, Anis. Thank you, Anis. I would like to shortly answer your second question. I fully agree with your proposals to have the International Youth Parliament commission everything possible on the international level. But I have an additional proposal to your proposal. Then I will put in front of them, or within their competence, even bigger competences than the current European Union institutions. And why not? To give more competence to the young people on the international level, on the European level. Because I do not think that our elderly colleagues are much wiser than you are, with having 25 or 30 years of age. So that's not going to happen, I can tell you realistically, because I've been for a while in this discipline of politics, and unfortunately, elderly people are not quite happy to transfer too much of the power they have at present. But it's our job to push them in this direction, because it should be a really good competition to see your International Youth Parliament and International Parliament, or European Parliament of Elderly People, so to say. I can tell you only a small statistics from our current parliament. We have 15 members of parliament out of 120, which are within that age limits of to be considered as a young people. And I can tell you that in my country, that is the age limit is 35. So maybe they are not so young, but that is the age limit. And we have a small number of people from that age group, and no one should be satisfied with that fact. I have missed maybe that point to emphasize in my previous answers, but I can do that now. I have approximately 15 to 20 people which might be considered as my team, then people I brought with me in the office since May last year. And I can tell you that the average, the median age of all of them is around 35 years of age. And if you know that no one is older than 45, and if I'm 57, you can imagine that I'm twice that age. So I'm encircled by the young people. So that might be maybe a symbolic small contribution by my side to promoting young and bright people to work even for the highest political office in our country. Speaking about economy, I can tell you one short episode and short conversations from my discussion with EU Commissioner Várhelyi, when in February this year he came to Skopje to explain that at least the parameters, the outline of that economic and investment plan in the European Union, which at that period of the time was in the draft stage, so to say. It was still not accepted by the Europeans. And he started to speak about some unbelievably high numbers. He started to speak about 9 billion euros only for 6 Western Balkan countries, and said this is only for this period of the time. And after that, for the so-called rescue package or additional help for the pandemic, it should be tens of billions of euros plus. And I disbelieve his words. But when he was recently, a month ago in Skopje again, he said this is accepted by the European Union, that's approved, and we should deliver immediately all of these sums of money and the resources, not only the money, speaking about financial part of that package. We agree, both of us agree in February on that meeting, on the very first meeting, speaking about the economic support, that's not help, but support, let's say like that, to the local economies. That something like the new Marshall Plan for Europe, for Balkan, is needed. Because up to now, all of these so-called twinning programs, assistance by the European Union to the prospective or to the formal candidates for membership is obviously not enough. We need something more than that. And speaking about the assistance in the economic area, up to now, or speaking about 25 years ago, or since our independence, United States of America has been very much present here, but only teaching us about democracy. and investing with the resources, with the experiences, with their knowledge, with their experts in building up the democratic political system. While Europeans, and especially on the bilateral level some of the most powerful European countries, in the first place, Germany, they have been present here with the investments in the economy. So both of these kind of a help is needed for us. Maybe more is needed the economic assistance directly to the business community and to the people. And especially I'm speaking now for the so-called greenfield investments. We do need that. Maybe it's time now to somehow to transfer from one to the other stage. In the first stage, we have been taught about democracy. And after 30 years, probably we'll learn something about that. It's not enough, of course, but we have passed these first lessons in the field. Now we do need, I would say, that so-called the matching funds. If somebody from Europe is investing in North Macedonia €1, then we should provide from the domestic resources and sources another one. So that could be a good cooperation, and in which both sides will have the equal responsibility. But at the end of the day, the new opportunities for engaging the young people will be open here in North Macedonia, and that certainly will decrease the chances for young people to go outside and to look for opportunities everywhere else, but not in their fatherland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next question is from Roxana. Roxana Irod.
Hello, I'm really honored to be here right now. My name is Roxana Irod from Eurodemos Association Romania. And I wanted to ask not only Mr. President, but all the leaders, ambassador, and representative from each country present right now. Concretely, how do you involve youth in the decision-making process now? Is there any mechanism put in place already? So we can compare the situation in different countries right now, and we can possibly learn from each other what some countries do now. Can we implement that too? Some countries might do more than others, and we should have this comparison. Thank
you. If I may, I will say only 2 sentences on that, and after that I would like to hear other participants and would like to usurp the time you have in front of you. Last year we have adopted the law on youth for the first time in our country, and that was, I can tell you, the bipartisan support in the parliament, which happened after so long period of time, when the parties in power and parties in opposition in the parliament agreed to vote for the same text. And in that law we have a few forms which has been introduced for the first time in our legislature, how the young people will take part in the decision-making process. And what is important, that law envisages how the youth will take part in the decision-making process on the municipal level. For example, in each municipality, we have 80 of them in the country, including the capital. Then there is going to be one person employed specifically with the responsibilities in that area for the bigger inclusion of young people into the decision-making process on the local level. So maybe somebody will say that's nothing compared to some practices of the older European Union member countries, but that's something for us. I can tell you that something like that never existed before. Then the law targeting the youth population, especially and directly, and enabling them to take part in some of the decisions, in some, not in all of the decision-making processes. But that's a good start. We should still see, because they're quite a new law, how the implementation of that law is going on the local level and the central level as well. But I can tell you that on the level of the very text of that law, the content of that law, we should be satisfied. We should be satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. From what I could read in chat, Jovica has an interesting ideas and comments. He also has a question. So Jovica, please.
Yes, Mr. President, I have 3 questions for you. The first question is correlate by founding of exist of nationalism and extremism or crowd radicalism. Do you think it's necessary at us normally to prohibit founding of ethnic or extremist or ground radical political parties, wide practice as most European countries. Then I have second question correlate with religion beliefs.
Ivica, can I interrupt you for a while? Please, can you repeat the question? I didn't catch the point. Please.
First question?
The first question for me, yeah.
In a correlate with problem of nationalism and extremism, do you think it necessary to prohibit founding of ethnic or radical political parties or association, like practice at most European countries?
Got it, thank you.
Then I have second question, correlate with religion beliefs free at national constitution of area is a religion. Do you think is enough to guarantee just free of religion and beliefs? According to fact that North Macedonia is secular country, is not needed to enable some type of religion. I speak for Article 19 at Constitution of North Macedonia for free of religion beliefs.
What about the religious feelings? What is your question in essence regarding the religious freedom?
Because we are secular country, do you think it's not needed to enumerate that paragraph 3 and 4 of Constitution of North Macedonia to enumerate some type of religion like Macedonia Orthodox Church and other religion communities?
Ivica, thank you for your questions. North Macedonia is a secular country according to the constitution and in reality. So we can speak about the good European practices, but I can tell you that when compared to the other European countries, even with speaking about the old European Union member countries, I think that their religion is even more present in the public life. That's not an excuse for some excesses happening in our country, but I can tell you that we are not a European precedent that religion is too much present in political field or that the religious leaders have too much of a space in the public to speak about their activities. I think that we can somehow merge your your first question and to speak about that's not a proposal, I think that's a kind of thinking about that, whether we should forbid the activities of the radical party and organizations if they are based especially on religion. I can tell you that they are already forbidden. It's not possible in North Macedonia to organize or to have a political party based in their documents, because political parties are registered by the local courts. It's not possible to put in your statute or to put in your basic documents that you're a radical party which will try even to use the violence in order to achieve its goal and to register that kind of a party or organization. So, and I can tell you that in the past 15 years, we have at least several instances when the court has put out of the law or forbid some of the political parties and several of the NGOs which has been active in the fields not being previously declared by their basic documents. In essence, they have been doing something else than declared goals. So it is one thing, whether it is possible to forbid political parties in principle to be established on religious basis or on ethnic basis. We have that situation. We have that kind of many of them, political parties. And I think it's not possible and shouldn't be possible because that is the basic democratic principle. People can assemble because we have one of the basic constitutional principles that the people are free to assemble, to say whatever they want and to assemble. So why not to assemble themselves or yourself on the religious basis, on the ethnic basis, on whatever basis. But if you're stating that that's gonna be the platform for trying to reduce the rights of other people, of other religious communities or other ethnicities in the country, you're not gonna be registered. So in principle, that was a big debate. Probably you have not been born in the early 1990s. among the politicians and among the public intellectuals in the country, whether to allow the political parties to be established on the ethnic basis as well. Even today, people said many of the problems we are facing now will not exist if we forbid the political parties since the early 1990s not to be registered if they are based on, if the members are coming from one ethnicity. I think it's good to have all of them and completely freely to assemble in whatever form political parties and just they like. But of course, there are respective institutions in the country monitoring their activities. And if they use that, as I said, as a platform to reduce or to suppress anybody's rights who are not members of their organizations, they should be forbidden and simply outlawed.
Thank you, Mr. Pendarovsky. I was told that we have to let you go. We kept you more than was planned, but I think that you really enjoyed our discussion today. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your really inspiring comments and remarks. And I think the participation and also we had all the really fruitful discussion today. Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We will continue with our discussion and debate. I see here we have a question from Burak, who we heard him in the previous session, but now he has a question or a comment.
Thank you for leaving the scene. My question is for Ms. Prinsfeld from German Embassy, if she is still available and here.
Catherine? I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes, she's here.
Thank you. My question is, since we observe from Mrs. Svenja Schulze's remarks, Germany is strictly eliminating coal by 2053, and I would like to ask, to what extent Germany is cooperating with Southeastern European countries? Because we know that Germany is, as a mediator or as a peacekeeper country, is in many places and pioneering some other initiatives. So is Germany cooperating with neighbors or Southeastern European countries in this regard, or initiating any process? Thank you.
Thank you, Burak. Catherine, you can answer the question.
I must admit that I'm not fully aware of in which manner the German government is cooperating with scientists from other countries, but I'm sure they do. And what was for me very interesting to see yesterday, when there were the informations about a possible vaccine against COVID from a German company, that the head and the the most important researcher in that company are of Turkish origin, which for me was very interesting to see. They had, their parents had immigrated to Germany maybe 30, 40 years ago when they were, these two were children, and they studied in Germany. They have had a good education in Germany, and now they are scientists, and they seem to be the first to discover this new vaccine, which is for me very, very interesting and a good result of successful immigration policy in Germany.
Thank you very much for your answer. I've read one interesting comment here in chat that we talked a lot about high-profile politics, but we somehow forget to talk about human rights, and that's one of the topics why we are here today, about the LGBT community and about the women rights we mentioned in the beginning. So maybe some of you can or want to ask a question or maybe add a comment on this issue. No matter if it is from the group of participants or the decision makers.
I can comment on this point, but I would like you please to precise it again if it's possible.
Critique that we talked a lot about high politics and we forgot to pay attention on the human rights issues that we mentioned in the beginning about the LGBTQ community and the women rights and the human rights in general?
I think that human rights in general is one of the most interesting topics for discussions. It's a very hot topic nowadays because when we talk about human rights, we touch a lot of political issues that barely cannot be solved in the worldwide. We cannot just talk about Europe. We can talk about third countries that have a major, we may say, population that suffers from a lot of family conflict and immigration. So LGBTQ community, I think, as we have discussed or we discussed so in our group while working on the vision, this is a very sensitive topic of discussion, and we barely cannot avoid it, but we can just provide at least a lot of therapeutic maybe cures, therapeutic possibilities. So since birth for the LGBT community, we can just help the society to accept this as something that we cannot avoid because it has been so existing so since ages and a lot of years. This is one of the rights that we have to believe in. So as a human right. And I think that everyone in the world or everyone in Europe, everyone in his society or in his region has to have a voice so democratically without so referring to politicians. So decisions that are always referred to their interests, while the interests of their parties or the interests maybe of their governments. I think any one of the participants can share with me the idea because we have already discussed about this point so before, and we strongly have had very nice answers. Yes, and thank you. I hope that I could provide useful or helpful feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Demi, who is the chair of the European Affairs Committee in our parliament, want to say something? A new law was passed recently in our parliament, so maybe you want to explain us more.
Yes, I want to mention that the law on anti-discrimination was passed in the parliament and in the Committee for European Affairs with no vote against. So that it is, I think that it's a huge step forward, and of course that the content of the law was discussed and consulted with civic organizations, and most of the suggestions are already incorporated in the law. So one of the, let's say, conditions, if I can say condition, in our path into European integration process is solved, fulfilled now, and not only for that, not only for fulfilling a condition, but it's a good legal ground to take care for human rights and to provide institutional mechanism to secure their rights. So in this regard, all political parties within the parliament supported this law.
Yes. Yes. Indeed, it's been a very good move, the adoption of the anti-discrimination law in the parliament. And it is something that, yes, the European Union pushed hard for. But I want to stress something important, and that is that many of the ways we raise the standards of the country or we protect human rights, such as through this law, do not need the European Union. North Macedonia is a sovereign country. It can I speak as a deputy head of delegation of the EU, whose job it is to help the country move towards accession. But there are many countries out there who are not in the EU, are not on the way to joining the EU, and can still raise their standards. They can still generate growth in their economy. They can still protect their environment and improve the quality of the air that citizens breathe. In other words, while it's good to talk about investment, it's good to talk about money coming from the European Union, it's good to talk about projects and programs. These are just tools to make the transition easier. We can help to pay for certain plants, to treat water, or to help with reducing emissions of power stations. But don't forget, the center of reform, the powerhouse of reform of North Macedonia, will always be Skopje. It will never be Brussels. You are in the driver's seat for your country's reforms, and it will always be, as a country negotiating accession and as a member state of the European Union. Learn from the countries around you. Some of them have already joined. Still, the responsibility will remain in your hands. The EU provides tools to make things easier, faster, better, but the main responsibility is in your hands. Do not expect things to fall in your lap. And don't wait for accession to the European Union to raise standards that can be raised simply by yourselves already now.
Message can be understood as some kind of comfort in this situation, but I think it's a really important fact that you're saying that we are the ones who should implement the reforms, and the center will always be Skopje or the country in particular. Thank you for your remarks. I see still a hand from Jovica. Maybe he has another question. He had two previously, or it's just no. Okay. Maybe some other question or a comment you want to ask? Anis, again?
Yes, actually, I'm very amazed by this event, and I can never find in this year an area where we can speak and just express our thoughts, our views, from the international area. Well, my question is to Mr. Julian. Just a brief question. Do you think that the accession of North Macedonia to the European Union is very necessary, taken, as you have mentioned, some countries that are in the EU but cannot face a lot of economic issues in their countries? How far would North Macedonia push up its economy to be one of the major integrated countries in the European Union? Do you think that it's really necessary for North Macedonia to be part of the EU, or it's better to be like an independent country with a high economy, international investments, and maybe an international level of economy in the world? Positively, I would like just to know your opinion regarding this. Thank you.
I think whether it is necessary or not, that is a decision for the citizens of North Macedonia. I think being in the European Union is a leg up if you are aiming high for your economy and to really want to have a competitive economy. North Macedonia is not a very large country, but even much larger countries, for example, the UK, that has just chosen to leave the European Union, is learning some of the basics of international trade. That if you are going to compete on the international stage and you are going to negotiate trade deals, you will be much stronger negotiating as part of a bloc of 450 million citizens, the largest economic bloc in the world, than you would be if you are negotiating a trade deal with China or Japan or the United States. The European Union does provide, as we said, funds, programs, projects to improve standards, to bring your production up to the levels that allow you to export easier. But this is what I was saying before was in no way an indication that I think accession is not necessary or it doesn't matter if it gets postponed. I'm only saying that, as the president said, we only have one life. We need change in this country needs to happen now, and it doesn't depend on the accession process. A lot of the things, the pollution in the air that we will experience in these next months in Skopje can be solved without joining the European Union. It takes discipline, it takes regulation, it takes the willpower to impose regulation and to enforce regulation properly without fear or favor. And these things can be done now, and they need to be done now because the health of young people today in this country, middle-aged people, your old people, suffers because of this. And as the president also mentioned, makes you more vulnerable to the pandemic that we are all living together.
Thank you, Julian. I'm afraid that our time has run out. It was a really splendid discussion and debate we had today. Thank you all for your participation, and thank you for being so focused. I know it's so hard in this form. Online meetings and conferences are always harder to be productive. Thank you all again, and hope to see you next time in more, how can I say, more comfy environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.